Welcome back to AM Northwest. How do you know if your child needs therapy? Here with, as always, helpful insights and tips, we welcome back author of the soon-to-be-released Staying Connected with Your Teen, family therapist Yshai Boussi. Good to have you back again.
Great to be back.
I guess that is the big question, first of all, is how do you know when your teenager, let's start with teenager, needs therapy? How would you be able to tell?
It's certainly tricky, which is why that's a big question.
Teenagers are just kind of volatile anyway, right?
Right.
Moody.
Normal moodiness.
Yes.
Are they're in the room a lot? Is that normal or
Yeah.
not normal? When do I be concerned? How do I know?
Right.
So the first thing I would say is every teenager could benefit from therapy.
Yeah.
So
Every
let's just say
person
that.
can benefit.
Every person.
Yeah.
So you're never going to go wrong if it's a skilled therapist, and you're not going to cause harm by getting your child a therapist. Having said that, what are some of the red flags or some of the concerns that might say, you know what, no, we need to push this issue?
Yeah.
If you're seeing an immediate change in behavior, for example, behavior change that feels abrupt in the areas of school, social relationships, eating, sleeping, attitude at home, that just seems out of character.
Right.
And it's going for a while, for a few weeks or a month, and it's not just like a bad day. That's a sign that, okay, let's look into therapy here. Another thing I would say is sometimes if your child has been through a hard thing like a loss or some kind of difficult situation and they're acting normal, but you're kind of like, but they shouldn't really act normal. They don't seem
Right.
sad, but they should be sad.
Right.
Maybe it's a divorce or some grief
Death
or
in the family.
That's
Yeah.
another time to say, let's go have you talk to someone
Sure.
just to make sure you're doing okay.
Okay, that makes sense. And then when it comes to kids, what are you on the lookout for?
So kids, there's some similarities in terms of overlap or some significant change in behavior, like, they're not eating as well, or they're more moody, or they're not sleeping, or they're in your bed with you more often, or they're crying more easily.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe they're getting into trouble with peers or having peer relationships at school, or they're not going to school. So some of those things you want to look at. With kids, the thing about therapy is you want to also be involved with them and support
As in go to
them.
therapy sessions with them.
Go to sessions with them, or at least be on standby nearby so you're involved in the process with them.
Should you do that for your teen as well?
I'm a big believer that for parents of teenagers, it's really important to be involved in the process. Now that might be in the session, it might be out of the session. There are different types of teen therapists. Some involve parents, some don't. I involve parents a lot. To me, they're an important part of the process. Some therapists don't do that as much, but there are things parents can do even in those situations to be involved. You can ask questions to your therapist. That you might ask a question like, how can I support my child with the work you're doing?
Right.
It's not intrusive, you're not invading their privacy, but you're saying, I'd like to be supportive. How do you feel like they're doing in terms of their, I don't need details, but their treatment goals, progress? Those are questions that you can always ask a therapist.
Do you ever find, though, in your therapy that a kid or a teenager will say one thing, will say the situation is A, and a parent says the situation is B? Like they'll complain about their parent doing this, and the parent says, no, I don't do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I ever find that? Do I ever not find that?
That's always the case.
It's not always the case.
Okay, but
it's
it's
very
often
common.
the case.
It's very common.
Right.
Absolutely. Which is why being involved is so important.
Yeah.
And to have a therapist. So this is kind of a side topic related to this, but how do you decide on a therapist?
Yes, how do you?
Well, one is you want a therapist that has experience with, if we're talking about older kids, has experience with adolescents, but also does not judge or blame parents. I think that sounds obvious, but there are some therapists, I hate to say
That
it,
do blame
that have a
parents.
bias against parents.
Yes.
And they will, whatever the child says, they're going to take it at face value and not
Right.
check it out. Because kids do say things in the moment. They're mad at their parents, so
Right.
they'll exaggerate or say things. And so you want a therapist that's going to at least be supportive of you, not judge you and not blame you.
Right.
And involve you to some extent in the therapy.
How do you find a therapist? And I mean, I feel like during COVID and maybe even now that it's tough to find a therapist that doesn't, that has an opening, honestly.
Yeah, it is. It is not as tough as it was during the pandemic. That was really rough. But
Yeah.
I think it's, some places to start. Talk to friends. I really am a big
good
fan.
idea.
We need to get rid of this stigma.
Yeah.
Like, I talk like our kids could benefit from therapy. Your kid, other people's kids, like our kids all should go to therapy.
Yeah.
Let's just talk openly about it, and then we can talk to our friends. You know, hey, who's a therapist your kid's seeing? Is that helpful? I don't need to know details, but do you have any recommendations, referrals? It's surprising how many people go to therapy that don't talk about it. But there's a little more stigma with older kids too, because parents feel like they're failures, or if my kid goes to therapy, I must be a bad parent, or I failed. No, I want to tell parents, be really clear. It is not your fault.
Right.
You did not cause this. Your kid is going through some challenges and they need extra support. You need extra support.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. So asking friends, pediatricians, school counselors are great resources. There are some therapy directories online. PortlandTherapyCenter.com, PsychologyToday.com, GoodTherapy.org are examples of a few as well, where you can look for therapists.
Okay, we want to tell everyone your book that's soon to be released in March is coming up, Staying Connected with Your Teen. Yshai, Boussi, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest.